Hey guys, this is Rich Klein from the Diamond Law Group. Today we're going to go over how to email like a pro. At the Diamond Law Group, one of the things that we are known for is our instant response time. And I'm going to show you today how we go about doing that. First, we're going to take a look at my monthly email report from July of 2022. You can see here that the average messages that I received was 11,454 emails in 1 month. If you take an average of 4 weeks per month and 5 days per week, that's 20 days. You can see real quick that if you take the total emails divided by 20 days, it's roughly 572 emails a day. Divided by 8 hours, per hour, I'm receiving 71. That means per minute, I am receiving 1 email approximately. You say, well, how do you go about responding to all those emails? Let me show you. So if you scroll down here, it shows the busiest hours that I receive my messages is generally, as we said before, between 9 and 5. And it breaks down per day how many emails we received. So on July 6th, received 593. July 25th, 693 emails. You say, well, how quickly are you responding to these emails? If you look here, the time before first response, they say 15 minutes. It's usually quicker than that, if you could believe it, is 4,337 emails. And within the first hour, it's 1,800. So if you take within first 15 minutes plus the first hour, that's 6,000 emails. That's over half of the emails received or responded to within 1 hour. They only include this average response time as 2 hours because that takes into consideration nights and weekends. And even though we generally extend our day into the night and often work on the weekends, the average first response time to every single email that was received, all approximately 12,000 of them were responded to within 2 hours. The average person who utilizes email receives around 1,500, 1,600 emails per month. I received 10 times that amount, all of which were responded to within 2 hours. So when anyone takes longer to respond to an email, I often question why. You're not receiving as many emails as I am, and it really comes down to efficiency, which is what we're going to cover now. First thing is, to show you guys what happens is we sometimes exceed our daily limits for sending emails because we send so many emails. Gmail legitimately thinks that no human being should be capable of sending as many emails as we do. So what we created was something known as an alias. What an alias is an email address. So for instance, I myself am on the A team, of which consists of other staff members, and we all send and receive from the same email address, which allows us to facilitate a larger volume to be able to send. Oftentimes, you'll send an email to an attorney, and he or she will respond back, make sure you copy my paralegal on everything, which first of all is a little insulting because the attorney should know what's going on in their transaction. Irrespective of that, however, if you have an alias that was forwarded to both the attorney and the paralegal, you wouldn't have to do that. When you're sending an email from an alias, you just have to toggle right here to send to. You just copy yourself on all of the emails, so that way your team members know that it was sent. The other really important thing to do when you're responding to emails is to make sure that your conversation mode is on. This is what the emails look like if your conversation mode is not on, okay? So we received an email at 7:23, 7:24, and 7:25. If I went into these emails and answered them in the order in which they were received, I would respond to this client that says that they want to close at 10 o'clock. Sure, no problem, I'll close at 10 o'clock. Then when I go to the next email, A minute later, they then change their mind. If I say, okay, no problem, we'll go to 11 o'clock, that's not an issue. Now I've sent 2 emails, the first of which was totally out of order. And then if you look, it's 7:24. If we go to 7:25, oh, they changed their mind again. They want to close at 10 o'clock. Now I've sent 3 emails saying 10 o'clock's fine, 11 o'clock's fine, 10 o'clock's fine, when that's totally inefficient. So what you should do is go into your settings, look for conversation mode, conversation view, turn that on. So now what you'll see is that it's one email chain. And on this chain, you'll see that if it's unread, the client will say that they want to close at 10 o'clock. But then if you look further on the same chain, before you've responded, so you're reading all the communications at the same time, no 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock. So then I can just respond, received all 3 of your emails, 10 a.m. it is. That's it. You don't have to respond to 3 emails. You're responding to one email chain that has all 3 communications on it. Okay. In order for this to work, you must keep the email subject the same. If you change the subject, it won't work. If you are forwarding emails, for instance, I'm going to forward this to somebody else. You have to make sure that whatever else you're forwarding on this chain is meant for that viewer. You don't want to send anything that could potentially be confidential to somebody else. So always make sure when you're using conversation mode that you're responding to the correct chain and forwarding everything to the correct parties. The other thing that's really important to keep your inbox straight is to make sure that you are archiving emails. This sometimes confuses people in that they think that they're deleting the email. So for instance, this email that I showed you about Gmail jail, as we call it, I'm going to archive this. And you say, well, Rich, what happens to it? Where are we going to find it? You simply just go over to All Mail. And you'll see that it's right here. It's at the top. When you're searching for emails, again, from your clean inbox, leaving only items that need to be addressed here, you can just simply type in Gmail jail and it'll pop right up. Okay, so by archiving, it allows you to keep all of your emails that you need to address in the same place. If your inbox looked like this and you read some emails and you only addressed a few, it would be very difficult for you to find what it is that you actually need to address. The other thing that we use here in order to keep everything organized are what we refer to as labels. So you can create a label by going into your settings and literally going to labels here, and it'll show you all the different ones that you can create. So for instance, I use something called lists, and then I go to my daily lists. Again, I go through my labels every day, every single one of them. NIK, short for not in contract, which we do every day. I go through all of our bank files that are scheduled, and then all of our scheduled tentative for our purchase and sale work. So I go through these lists every single day, and the list of lists actually makes it easier to keep track of things that you need to review daily, weekly, and monthly. And then I have other things that I need to follow up with on a rotating basis. You can also take these emails and literally drag it into wherever you need to, and then it'll appear in that label. Okay, so you can also drag it back into your inbox, and you'll see now that it's labeled. You can change the colors of your labels if you want them to stick out a little bit more. So this will set the colors for that. Okay, so that way when they pop up in your inbox, you'll see everything that appears. You can do that for all the different sub labels as well. So that way it appears in your inbox, you'll be able to see it more clearly if it's something that's important to you. All right. Next, when you're responding to an email, there's the ability to reply all. Make sure that if you're replying, if there's multiple people on the email, you have to make sure that everyone on the email is supposed to be there. If there's some items that are meant for some individuals and not for others, you have to manually remove whoever is in that that email. All right. So if we go in and reply, be careful if you're replying all, because you may need to remove people who are on the same chain. Along those lines, you can CC people, that's carbon copy, and then BCC is blind carbon copy. So that way, whoever it's sent to doesn't know who else others sent it to. So for instance, if you are an attorney communicating with another attorney and you want your client to be able to see what you're sending to the other attorney, the appropriate spot for you to place them would be within the BCC mark and not within the CC, because you don't want the other attorney communicating with your client for ethical considerations. Next, we have something known as chats. Okay. So if we go into our chats, there's a separate label here for chats. And that would appear on this side. Not going to pull it up because we have confidential chats within my firm, but it would come up here. And that's more of an instant notification, kind of like a text message to staff. If your sender or receiver also uses Gmail, they don't need to be within your company. So if you have external senders or receivers, you could add them to your Gmail chats as well. There's another thing that I personally use to keep track of everything, and that's known as, for me, it's these stars here. So I'll show you when we go back to the inbox, but you can select how many stars or different ones that you want. For me, they mean different things. You could move them around in terms of how you want them to appear. So in your inbox here, you would see this email. You could star them by just literally clicking them, and they mean different things to me that you could create yourself. That way, when you go over to your inbox, there's a group for stars. You could see when you click on it that they will then appear there. So that way you can follow up with them as often as necessary. Snoozing is something that we also use to remind ourselves about something. So if I wanted to have this, it's right now at 7:55. If I wanted this to come up in my inbox again, I would then snooze it for 8 a.m. And then once 8 a.m. rolls around, we'll go through a couple more things. You'll see it automatically populate back into my inbox. In the interim, I'm going to show you something called a template. So what a template is a pre-created email that you could literally insert template into your email, and then it'll pop up with everything you needed to say, so you don't have to retype commonly used phrases. So for us, this is how to retain my firm. I strongly suggest putting items that you need to edit, such as our legal fee, in some type of highlighted color. So that way you can not send something that hasn't been edited. To create the templates, you simply go down templates, you create your email first, and then you can literally save as a draft, and then you just save as new, and then it'll be there for the next time. All right. In terms of labels, if I didn't mention before, you could actually just go here and create new label, and you can just name it whatever you want to, and then that'll appear on your label list as well. Another important aspect of emailing is being able to unsend an email. So if I was going to type out something to myself with the words undo, I can send it. Then over here, it'll say undo if I think of something that I don't want to send. So I just click undo, and then it'll pop right back up. Again, you could change that setting over here. It's set for 5 seconds. You could set it for 30 seconds, which is usually what I suggest. It doesn't hurt anything. Okay. And that's how you would change that. So we use Grammarly to make sure that all of our spelling and grammar and phrasing is correct. Just an example of that is it'll automatically correct the spelling of that. If I don't put an apostrophe, it'll correct all of this as well. All right. And that's all done through Grammarly. That's literally checking it right here. Gmail has its own built-in suggestions for commonly used phrases. And then if you just hit tab, that'll come over. You can see that if I don't put a question mark, sometimes it'll then change that to a question mark as well. So Grammarly up here, combined with Gmail, has its own grammar suggestions, spelling suggestions. It'll smart compose, and then it'll also learn how you phrase certain things. That way it'll make it a little bit easier for you to facilitate. As you can see, this was snoozed less than an hour ago, as we discussed before, and that just popped up back into our inbox. A couple of other quick notes regarding email is you have to understand your audience, and usually that skews by age demographic. For instance, younger people use email more formally than older people. And what I mean by that is younger people are used to texting or other types of instant messaging. And in those unofficial or informal communications, they don't usually use proper punctuation or grammatical. You could use emojis or abbreviations, things of that nature. When it comes to writing an email, usually younger people take a little bit more time to draft it, and it has more meaning. So if you have an email coming from a person who is a little bit younger and they send it, if you take long to respond to it, they're going to be offended by it because they took the time to respond to it. And if it may ruffle feathers if you're not as responsive as you need to be. Conversely, sending an email to somebody who's older, who may not use email as frequently, they view that as an instant message because it's not as formal as, let's say, a phone conversation, which is typically the preference. So you have to know who you're sending your email to and the expected response time and the formality of it. As you could see, if you're continually emailing somebody who doesn't check their email frequently, you're not going to get the job done. Or alternatively, if somebody is consistently emailing you and you're not responding because they're treating that communication a little bit differently than you are, then there's going to be a breakdown and tensions will be unnecessarily strained. The other thing that I would suggest is not going back and forth with people in an argument. Through email, it's just not the proper forum, and it's better to just pick up the phone. And again, that's coming from me, who receives basically an email a minute. You have a 15-minute conversation with somebody. As you can see, if it takes you a couple of minutes to review each email, things could spiral out of control pretty quickly. But it's a lot easier to pick the phone to discuss something that may be an issue for somebody rather than going back and forth through email. The other final suggestion that I would make for you guys is if you're not going to check your email, don't give it out. Okay. So oftentimes people, they'll say, I don't use my email. I don't check my email. Well, then don't give it out. If you are a real estate professional and you don't check your email, don't give it to anybody. Give them your preferred method of communication, and that'll be the way in which you speak with them. If you want to text with them, that's great. You can do so through text. If you prefer phone calls only or meeting in person, that's great too. If you want some other type of instant messaging, such as Facebook Messenger or Instagram direct messages, that's fine. But you have to be able to convey how you intend on communicating and how often, and which hours are or are not acceptable, which days are not acceptable beforehand. Otherwise, you're going to have a mismatch of expectations, and instead of that proactive approach, you're going to be totally reactive, and by the time things are reactive, it's usually too late. So I hope you guys find this to be helpful. If you have any specific questions as to everything that we went over today, my email address is rich@Diamond Law Group. I look forward to working with you guys soon. Take care.